Welcome to the Lost Princess. No, welcome to the story of our lives on the Breslov Book Club of Thornhill. We're in the second part of chapter 15. This week, my trusty companion, Rabbi Shmuley Fuchs, is not with us. He's gonna have to watch the shir for himself, and he'll be back, God willing, next week. But we will nonetheless move forward. So everybody should, of course, continue to follow our YouTube channel, Breslov Thornhill. Should check out the websites, lpitorah.org of Rabbi Yaakov Klein. And let's get moving. So it's nice to see that we have some of the people back in person here in the shul for the shir. Everybody's invited to come join in person, and if not, everybody is, of course, appreciated to join online in what's it called? Zoom. We're happy to have people join the shir in whatever way they can. So welcome everybody. Okay, we're in the middle of chapter 15. Chapter 15 is a very difficult chapter. It's a very long chapter, and we did the first part last week. And I think we're just going to get into it and do our best. This chapter, it's all well written, the whole book, in my opinion. But this chapter in particular, it's like every single paragraph is very important and is like a bombshell. So, we're not going to go through everything and, word by word. So make sure you read the chapter if you haven't read it yet. It's fantastic. And we'll pull out a few pieces here and there. And we'll bring maybe a little bit of introduction from another place. If you remember, we left off in the part of the story where the princess couldn't wake him up. She came by, and the viceroy was asleep, and she couldn't wake him up. And she expressed how terrible it was that he failed. We explained last week that really that was showing her confidence in him, and her tremendous love for him, that she really knew that he could do it, and she really wanted him to be able to do it. We spoke a lot about that. But she left him with her headscarf she took off, and with her tears, she wrote a message on the headscarf to the viceroy. And we understand that message represents the Penimius HaTorah, the inner dimension of the Torah, the secrets of the Torah. And so, before we get into the rest of the chapter, I want to bring something that I heard from Rabbi Moshe Weinberger about this concept of Penimius HaTorah. So, just for those who don't know, when we say Penimius HaTorah, we're referring to not let's call it the plain understanding of, let's say, the Chumash, not just what the words mean on a surface level, but the deeper level of understanding that comes out from those words. It could be that it means just a deeper understanding of certain character traits, or of life in general, or of understanding how different parts of the Torah connect, which is a level above the simple meaning, plain meaning of the verse. Or it could mean all the way from there up to, the depths of Kabbalah, spiritual metaphysics, whatever the proper word is. It spans a lot. But Penimius HaTorah is basically the deeper story that surrounds the plain meaning of the text. And so we see it as Midrash, we see it as Chassidus, right? We see it as Kabbalah, and it's really the part of Torah that speaks to our soul on a deeper level. So what does it mean? In order to understand this, we're going to actually take a little jump to the very end of the story. In the next chapter, I think part of the story that we're going to read brings this concept up. But when the princess goes, she gets taken to a place, she says, where she's going to be found is a mountain of gold and a palace of pearls. She's going to be hidden in the mountain of gold and the palace of pearls. This is where he's going to ultimately find the princess in a mountain of gold and a palace of pearls. So that's really, if the princess is telling us that Penimius HaTorah is the way that we're going to find her, how does that relate? What does that scene, what is that expression, mountain of gold and palace of pearls, how do we understand that in relation to the Penimius HaTorah? Like, what does it mean? Mountain of gold, right? So Rabbi Weinberger brings from this beautiful sefer we talked a little bit about last week called Kanafayim, which is an explanation of the stories of Rabbi Nachman by Rabbi Erez Moshe Doron from Israel. And he says like this: where do we see, it's mind-blowing to imagine a mountain of gold. Just like a mount, like everything's gold, right? And one of the questions that the viceroy asks when he gets close to there is he asks, what is valuable over there? What's worth money over there? Like, how am I gonna, presumably asking, how am I gonna navigate my way there? What has value over there? And the answer he gets is everything is valuable over there. You're going to a mountain of gold, and everything is valuable over there. What does it mean? How do we understand this? This is not in the writing of this chapter, by the way. This is outside. So there's a few things to look at over here. So first of all, one aspect is like this. Sometimes, and I think we can probably feel this quite a bit in the societies that we live in, when everything is going very well, when we have a lot of wealth, when we're in a society that has a lot of wealth, and we all have cars, some of us maybe have fancy cars, I don't know what you guys drive, right? We have nice houses, we're comfortable, we have nice clothing, we have heats in the winter, we have air conditioning in the summer, we have restaurants, we have food, and we can complain about the stupidest little things, right? We have everything. Can you imagine if you plucked someone out of a shtetl from Ukraine in like 1600s and you put them down and they went into a kitchen that we have? They would think they're in a spaceship if they even had a concept of a spaceship. They didn't even know, right? We have so much. And one of the traps that we can fall into is when we find ourselves in a place where everything is valuable, all of a sudden nothing is valuable. Right? Meaning, like I'm saying, we could have our minds blown by any one of the creature comforts that we have nowadays. If we would just think about it for a minute and imagine, we have the ability right now to think about refugees leaving Ukraine, right? And leaving with just the clothing on their back, having nothing, or being caught in a small town or in a village or something where they can't get out, and they have nothing. We can think about people who live in other areas. The Syrian people have been in like the worst situation for so long, right, where they have nothing, and they barely have food to eat. Maybe they haven't eaten meat in years, right? Unbelievable, terrible situations. And if you would show just 1 hour of one day of the life of probably most of the people that are watching right now, they would be ecstatic. It would be like a dream come true. They would never forget it, right? And what do we find ourselves doing? Maybe the restaurant, we're sending the food back because it's not exactly hot enough to the way that I must have it, right? It's not valuable to us. It's not worth anything to us. What? A meal that someone else prepared for you in a place where you can sit comfortably, you have to send it back? How? It's insanity. It's total insanity, right? And we could go on and we could go on, but unfortunately, sometimes when we find ourselves in such a situation where everything has value, we find ourselves in the situation where nothing has value, right? First world problems, right? This is a thing people like to talk about, first world problems. So, that's on the negative side. The positive side, right? What's the positive side of everything has value? By the way, this is one of the most amazing aspects of Penimius HaTorah. Penimius HaTorah, you can literally have the opposite truth of the same point, and they're both 100% truth. You can't have that always, right? This is one explanation of everything is valuable there. Another explanation is like this. Weinberger brings this from the Ishbitzer Rebbe in the Beis Yaakov. He says like this, there's a concept, which is kind of what we're just saying, which is mabakach. The mabakach shebekol davar. Right? And mabakach means literally means like what's in it. What kind of value does this have? What do I care about this? What do I care about this? Think about like kids nowadays, right? Like I may be romanticizing my childhood from whatever, when I was a child 30, 40 years ago, right? But it seems to me that we had a lot to do. And we spent a lot of time outside and playing with friends, and we couldn't call anybody, you couldn't text anybody. You had to, go knock on the door. You had to call, but we did a lot of playing around the neighborhood, and riding our bikes, and exploring, and throwing stuff at each other, and getting hurt. We were boys, right? And doing all those crazy things. But we didn't have nearly the entertainment facilities that kids have nowadays. But we did stuff, right? And nowadays, kids have how many different, right? There's a term that we use now, devices. Like device means anything, right? Any kind of thing is a device, but this is a known term now, right? A computer, a phone, a laptop, a iPad, whatever it is. There's so much. They could be occupied for hours and hours with movies, with TV, with music, with video games, with everything. But still, kids get bored, right? And annoyed and upset. Bored and annoyed and upset, right? How could it be? How could it be? It's like this mabakach. It's like everything I see, it doesn't have value, like we're saying, right? So the Ishbitzer Rebbe in the Beis Yaakov says like this: how do you define the word kedusha? Kedusha we usually translate as holiness, right? And we actually had a huge argument here in the shul, a real argument a few weeks ago about this. Someone was very upset that we translate the word kadosh or kedusha to be holy, because he said that word means nothing to anybody whatsoever. It literally doesn't tell anybody anything. He prefers to use the word sacred, which has, according to him, more tangible connotations, I guess. Means more to him, right? So, interestingly, the Ishbitzer says that it's impossible to translate the word kedusha. We can't really put our finger on what it really means. But he says one of the aspects of it that we can understand is the mindset of kedusha. And he said that the mindset of a person of kedusha, of a person of holiness, is the opposite, the absolute opposite of mabakach, that nothing has value. Rather, that everything has value and significance and importance. Everything. Right? For sure, every person. For sure, every Jew. For sure, every person. But even everything in the world, every item, every stick, every stone, you name it, has importance and significance. This is the mindset of somebody who exists on a different plane of existence. There's a famous story of Rav Kook, and there was a person called Rav Aryeh Levine, who was known as, in some circles, as the Tzaddik of Yerushalayim. There's another person who was known as the Tzaddik of Yerushalayim also, but Rav Aryeh Levine was when he would visit the prisoners, and a big tzaddik. One time, Rav Kook and Rav Aryeh Levine, they were contemporaries. They were walking together down the street, and there was like a fence beside them with some leaves sticking out of it. You know how it happens. And as they were walking and talking about holy things, I'm sure, Rav Aryeh Levine just picked one of the leaves off without thinking, and Rav Kook stopped him and was like, "What did you just do?" And Rav Aryeh Levine was like, "What are you talking about? Why did you just pick that leaf off?" And he said, "What do you mean? Just a leaf. I just picked the leaf off. Whatever. I'm not doing anything." And he said, Hashem made that tree grow over there. There's life going through that tree. That leaf, Hashem put it there for a purpose, and you just ripped it off without thinking, without any purpose whatsoever? Right? This is the mindset of Kedusha. How could I just rip and destroy something for no purpose whatsoever? Right? Rav Kook wouldn't be a person who's against using, happened to be that he was a shtickle pro-vegetarianism, but he would not be a person who was against using the world when we need to use it, in whatever way we need to use it, and harvesting food, of course, and but he understood this, that chas v'shalom we would ever take something in the world and wantonly destroy it for no purpose whatsoever, even one leaf of a tree. How can we do such a thing? How can we just kill a bug for no reason whatsoever? Right? It's a vision of the world, that everything is of importance, right? So this connects very strongly to the concept of Penimius HaTorah, which we're going to see later on in some of the writings of this chapter. But the Penimius HaTorah is another characteristic of it, is that Penimius HaTorah unites all aspects of Torah together, allows us to see the connection between the Chumash and Halacha and Kabbalah. We can see how everything comes together. This is one of the things that Penimius HaTorah does. And what we're saying over here is that it allows us to see the whole world in this way, to see how everything in the world is important and everything in the world is connected. Really, it's all one. And our job is to try to understand and try to see the oneness in everything. Right? By the way, if there's internet problems, I already know about it. You can't hear at all? Did it cut out? But it was going and then it cut out? Now you can hear me, obviously, because you're nodding. Okay. Yeah, I think it's in the area. I'm going to do my best, and if it cuts out too much, we'll post the recording of it, and that's all we can do for now. I think that with all the trees that were knocked down from that storm and everything, I think there's a shtickle of a problem. But anyway, right? You think about this, right? The whole world knows this, that everything is one. And you see that in the old days, we used words that didn't really appeal to everybody. Everyone now, the let's call them new age type of people, everyone believes the same thing. Everyone sees the same thing coming, right? It's just what kind of words do we use? For example, I know for sure that there's certain people that I could say, wow, the Ribono Shel Olam, or God, is putting everything in line for you. It's really, you can see how God is really lining everything up in your life. You can see all the blessings in your life, right? I could say that to one person, but to another person, they would run away if I would say that to them. But what could I say to them? Wow, the universe is really lining everything up for you. The universe is showering you with all these blessings, right? And then it's okay. Right? But really, it's all the same thing. It's this concept that there's HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that there's one thing that unites everything. Penimius HaTorah, right? So this is one of the aspects, the ways to understand this concept, that everything has value there. In the place of the princess, everything has value. Either we can go down the wrong path, and because everything we have has value, we don't see value in anything. Right? We lose our ability to see value. So because everything has value, it's nothing to us. Or we can follow the path of Penimius HaTorah and the place the princess wants us to get to. And we can see really that everything that happens to me, every person I meet, everything I come in contact with has value and importance because it's there for me to connect to and somehow to be able to accomplish my mission in the world. Everything that I have. Second aspect that we talked about, L'chaim, that we talked about in this end of the story. So the mountain of gold. Amazing idea. Listen to this. Everybody probably knows here, or has seen at least, that in the parts of the Torah where we talk about the Mishkan, the tabernacle, or when we talk about the Beis HaMikdash, the Holy Temple, there's a lot of stuff in the temple, or in the Mishkan, that was covered in gold. Right? It was made of wood, covered with gold. Some parts were gold, then wood, then gold, but gold on the outside, wood on the inside. So one of the aspects is like this. This is a very simple idea, but very very important. Is that you see, what do we do nowadays in the regular world when we have items of value? Where do we keep them? So imagine you have diamonds, you have gold. Right? Where do you keep them? You usually keep them.
Safe deposit.
Keep them in a safe, or a safe deposit. What's a safe made out of usually?
Metal.
Iron.
Yeah.
Right? It's a cheap material. We take those things that are very valuable, and we store them inside something that's not valuable. Maybe you have a jewelry box on your dresser in your room made of wood. The gold goes on the inside, and the wood is what is on the outside, the cheaper material, protecting it, hiding it, right? The thing of value is on the inside, right? One of the things that the princess is trying to tell the viceroy, and that we see from where the princess is, the place that the princess is, the outside already is gold and pearls. That's the outside. Meaning to tell us that the place of the princess is a place where the inside is so valuable that even the outside is gold. Like the outside material, which is like in our understanding, the outside material is a safe that is steel. That's not worth so much. And the gold's on the inside. In the world of the princess, the safe is gold. Because what's on the inside is so much more valuable even than all the gold you can imagine. Right? Gold and pearls. Because what's on the inside in the place of the princess is our neshama, is our soul. This is what it means to say, forget all this other garbage. The gold doesn't go on the inside. That's not the value. Right? That's what we think, that the gold is the value. The value is our soul. Our absolute depth of existence, our connection on a spiritual level to the oneness of the entire universe, or, in the words that we use, God, right? and this depth of my existence is what's valuable. So the outside is gold. The inside is what's valuable. And this is also why Penimius HaTorah, another reason why Penimius HaTorah is called Penimius HaTorah. Penimius means the inside. It means inner. So we think that it's called Penimius HaTorah because it's the inner aspect of the Torah, the hidden inner aspect of the Torah, which is true, but it's also called Penimius HaTorah because it's the part that goes into us. It's the part that goes into our Penimius. It goes right into our soul and touches it and does something there that the rest of it can't do. Right? So there's some people here right now that I know that have not ever sat and learned halacha or Gemara or just simple, regular, everyday Judaism 101. Right? And those people who haven't done that, who are here, they don't even know. Like, they think that this is just what all of Torah is like. Right? This the stuff that really hits us at the core, which is awesome. But there's another aspect to Torah, which is the revealed aspect, which we're going to speak about also. And it has equal importance. But this Penimius HaTorah is the part that grabs a hold of our Penimius, of our inner nature, our depth, and really it wakes us up and allows us to experience something on a deep level. So with that, let's move to page 244, which is where we left off, and we'll try our best to bring out a few ideas over here. Okay, the first idea that he brings, the search for emotional stimulation. Bekitzer. Over here, the idea that Rabbi Yaakov Klein is saying is like this, is that as people, we crave emotional stimulation. Not only that, in a certain sense, we thrive on emotional stimulation. What do I mean by that? Sometimes it's great to be in love and to have a warm relationship with somebody, right? Fantastic. And this is something that keeps us going and gives us a very positive existence in life, right? But did you ever notice that we also crave the opposite, right? Like who here particularly enjoys watching a very sad movie and crying your eyes out? Right? There's something awesome when you experience something that makes you cry, that brings you to that place of real, identifying with a type of sadness or your own sadness. We say this. It's like a normal saying. I had a good cry. right? Sometimes you just need to cry. And by experiencing that, it grounds you to like a very true point in yourself. Right? You ever notice this? It's amazing. It's really fantastic, actually. It grounds you. You feel better. You really feel better after you've had a good cry because it brings you down. Really, all the other stuff, the fake stuff, goes bye-bye. And you experience something that is really central and very fundamental to your existence. Right? That's also an emotion. Right? We crave this type of emotional stimulation. So he says over here, quoting from the Eish Kodesh, the Pir Zetzner Rebbe, therefore, one who is clever will fulfill this need with passionate prayer and Torah learning. The soul whose divine service is without passionate feeling will have to find its stimulation elsewhere. It will either be driven to cheap, even forbidden sensation, or it will become emotionally ill from lack of stimulation. Meaning like this. Yeah, absolutely. Vered's saying it releases a lot and frees you for sure. For sure. So he's saying over here we have two choices, well, three choices. Right? Either we can get all of that emotional stimulation, which touches something real in us, by just watching movies every night. Or we can attach ourselves to Penimius HaTorah, and the Penimius of our own existence. Or we can just leave it aside and not ever address it and lead a blank robotic life. Right? But that's not what we want. So he has a very interesting paragraph at the bottom here. Let's read it out loud together. I mean, you don't have to read it together. I'll read it. More so than any other time in history, the heart and mind of today's Jew is engulfed with negative passions stemming from the newfound, almost total accessibility of the transient pleasures this world has to offer. In order to combat this onslaught of impurity, Hashem has granted our generation equally newfound access to the deepest light of Torah. Teachings of a deep, emotional, and exciting nature that allow for every detail of Torah to be placed in an all-encompassing system of lucidity, meaning, and emotional import. Right? Totally amazing. This elevated awareness allows us to understand that beyond our generation's lusts, desires, and anxieties lies a collective soul that is crying out for depth and light. Meaning, we all know this. Right? Everyone who's here is a mevakesh. Everyone who's here is a searcher, right? We're all looking for something. He's going to address this. We're all looking for something. There's something that we know is missing in our lives and in the world right now, right? And we have, if you want to go and try to cover it up or try to satiate that desire, there's all kinds of stuff in the world that you can try to do that with, right? But at the same time, as a remedy, we always say there's this concept of zel umazeh. There's always a balance in our free choice. Hashem has made it that in this time, right now, there's a tremendous, unprecedented access to deep, deep Penimius HaTorah, and amazing Torah ideas. Right? This right here is a very good example of it. Such a thing never existed. Never existed. All we had for a long time was just the plain story of the Lost Princess and a commentary in Yiddish. Right? And then a few more were written and everything, but something like this that brings us into our lives and every aspect of it didn't exist. It's unprecedented what we have nowadays. And who am I talking to over here? Right? We have a couple people sitting here in the shul right now with me. We have people in Toronto. We have people in, I think, Philadelphia here. We have, sometimes we have people in Eretz Yisrael, like all over. We're all connected. We have this unprecedented access Hashem is giving us to be able to experience Penimius HaTorah. Totally amazing. And this is something that we have to go after. He quotes from Rabbi Nachman that we should not be old. Right? I think I have more white hair than anybody here. I may not be the oldest, but I think I probably look the oldest than everybody here. Right? Rabbi Nachman says we can't be old. We mustn't be old. What is it? He says, even to be an old chassid. Why? Because we can't live in such an existence where we give up and we sit back and we don't feel the newness. We don't feel the inspiration and blessing in the world. We don't feel chizik, right? We're not supposed to be like this. We must always be searching and always be looking to fulfill our need for oneness, our need for emotional stimulation with our connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, is what he says. So he brings another aspect from Rabbi Nachman over here. Rabbi Nachman says, awesome stuff. Rabbi Nachman says this in Torah. He brings it here from Torah Kuf Nun Vav, but it's somewhere else. He says it also. This concept that when we get our mind moving, we get our thoughts moving, that creates, just like in the physical world, where movement creates heat, friction, stimulation, so too when we get our mind moving, when we get our soul moving, right, that begins to create heat and friction and sort of fans the flames of our existence and gives us a much more new, much more impassioned, inspired existence. So he says, at the bottom of page 246 here, when one's mind contemplates the greatness of Hashem and His holy Torah, passing quickly from thought to thought, this mental friction and the warmth it generates causes his heart to become inflamed toward Hashem. So think about it this way. This is what I wrote down for myself over here. We're studying Torah together, and we're talking about these concepts, and we're going one after the other, and they're all moving. And as they're going, we're getting a little more inspired and a little more inspired, right? We had over here, this past week, a Lag BaOmer bonfire over here. We had singing, we had dancing, we had Torah, we had bonfire, we had barbecue, we had everyone together, right? It's another thing. It gets us moving, it gets us going. We had Shabbos with, singing and tefillah and dancing and hours and hours of shiurim, learning together, and shalashudis, singing together, all of this stuff. If you experience it all, right, you start to be on fire. You start to be warm and moving and connected, right? And if you have a shiur once a week, it's a great place to start. But as you keep building these things up, like this is what this chapter is saying over here. The more we start engaging our Penimius HaTorah, and the more we start engaging our Penimi with the Penimius HaTorah, and we have this shiur and that shiur and this event and that event and these friends that I connect to, Shabbos meals that we share together. Everything is moving and creating warmth and friction till it gives us that fire in our soul that helps us to connect to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and to be actually on the trails of the princess, right? We're doing it. We're working. We're moving. We're on the trail. Totally amazing. And as he said over here, that the Penimius HaTorah, it's the underlining spiritual system that binds all of the Torah together. So I was thinking about this, that Reb Nosson Maimon, who's one of my rebbes in Breslov, so he had a program where he was getting yeshiva bachrim and kollel people from the Mir Yeshiva in Yerushalayim. The Mir Yeshiva is like the top of the top, sort of like biggest, most well-known Lithuanian style yeshiva. No lost princess there, no Penimius, right? None of that stuff. And so he was trying to see if he could get some of those young men interested in Penimius HaTorah, and specifically through the Torahs of Rabbi Nachman. And so he brought them in, and they had a similar to experience with what I had after spending many years in yeshiva and kollel, which was, I expected to see Breslov and the Torah of Rabbi Nachman to be like just fluffiness, just like, let's go dance, and let's go, let's write Hebrew letters on the side of a van and stand on top of it and dance and just be crazy and wild and happy. Simcha, dancing, emunah, that's it. It's the only three words that I thought ever came out of the Torah of Rabbi Nachman, right? But then he started teaching them, and he saw that Rabbi Nachman, in all of his Torahs, he takes a pasuk from the Torah, from Shir Shirim, from Tanakh, from Mishnah, from Gemara, from Kabbalah, and shows how the entirety of Torah, everything, from the plain meaning of the Chumash to the depths of Kabbalah to Halacha to Gemara, Mishnah, everything, Medrash, how everything is connected, right? The Penimius shows how it's all one thing. This is what Penimius HaTorah does. In his words, in Rabbi Yaakov's words over here, it's totally beautiful words. I thought I just had here. Yeah, Penimius HaTorah. It is that the underlying spiritual system that binds all of Torah, both the stories in Tanakh and its laws, both Halacha and Haggadah, in a single bond of divine unity is revealed. That's what Penimius HaTorah does, which is totally amazing. So this is one aspect. And this is what we got to do. We got to get ourselves involved and moving. Awesome. So the next thing that he brings here, there's much more to say, but let's move on. The next thing, page 250, is this. The next section is called "Quenching the Desperate Thirst of Our Generation." Okay, this is cool. So, a little bit of a preface to this is that this section of his book talks a lot about sort of the formal Jewish education system. Okay, the general place that he's coming from is the fact that in the formal Jewish education system, there's no Penimius HaTorah. There's no Agada even. In general, the Gemara is broken up into two sections. The part that is strictly dealing with understanding the legal system, how do we understand halacha, Jewish laws, and what to do and what not to do. And then there's another section of the Gemara. I mean, it's all interspersed, but there's another type of Gemara which is called Agada, which means sort of stories. And that's what it is. It's stories. Even the Gemara itself is half stories. Stories, Musar, and deeper understandings. None of that is taught in the school systems. Certainly, when you get higher up into the higher level yeshivas, nothing, zero. And so we see, unfortunately, that for many people, it doesn't work. They can't take it. They don't fit into that. And he says, let me just see. There's one line he says over here. Okay, I can find it quickly. Yeah, like this. Listen to this. This is at the bottom of page 254. As parents and educators, we must ask ourselves, how many children who fail out of our schools and fall out of touch with Yiddishkeit do so not out of rebellion or theological crisis, but simply because the greatness of their souls compels them to thirst for a level of Torah that is unavailable to them. With our own eyes, we see the manner in which so many of the teens we labeled angry, rebellious, and apathetic return to our communities a few years down the line with the works of Chassidus, Midrash, Agada, Ramchal, Breslov, Chabad, tucked lovingly under their arm, the teachings for which their souls had been so desperately yearning all along. This is something that is not taught in the school systems. And it's something that we need. Everybody needs. And particularly, this generation requires. So what's going on in this generation? What's happening over here? There's some amazing ideas here. Do you mind shutting that door, Sandra? Thanks. Amazing ideas over here. In footnote number 32 on page 250, he goes through something that's interesting, that we have to know about. So why is it that for a large swath of the Jewish education system, there's no Penimius HaTorah taught in it? So it happens to be that that some of us have talked about this before, that there was a particular disaster that happened to the Jewish people in, I think, the 1600s. Chaim. That was when there was a false Mashiach, false Messiah, by the name of Shabbatai Tzvi Yimach Shemo, who gained a strong following and claimed to be Mashiach, and really went down a terrible path. He started to do things like getting people to do what he called averas lishma, to do sins for the sake of heaven, meaning like to eat pork, for example, and to do all these crazy things. They say that he had some type of mental illness, which is entirely possible. I don't know, but in the end, he was put in a situation where he was either forced to convert to Islam or die. And he chose to convert to Islam, and a bunch of people followed him or just totally left everything because they were so dismayed from what he did. And it was a lot of people. It was a big situation. And because of that, a whole entire swath of the Jewish people outlawed the learning of Kabbalah because they saw that it was dangerous. So from that point, a whole group of Yiddishkeit stopped learning Kabbalah completely and made tremendous restrictions. You could only learn Kabbalah if you were a certain age, and if you're married, and if you already knew the whole entirety of the rest of Torah. And so it was essentially put on the shelf and not studied. And so all there was the plain meaning of the Torah. The plain meaning of the Torah, by the way, is very difficult and very complex. It's not that it's simple at all. right? The Gemara and Halacha and everything is very deep and complex and hard, very, very hard, right? But it's not inner. And so we come to a place nowadays with the rising up of the movement of Hasidus in the late 1700s, the light shining of the Baal Shem Tov coming into the world, and all of his students, Rabbi Nachman and all of the followers afterwards, and Lubavitch and everyone, right? They began to reintroduce Kabbalah and Penimius into the world, but it wasn't met very well at the beginning. There was fighting. It was a terrible situation. We happen to find ourselves now in a situation where it's kind of melding a little bit, and Penimius is becoming much bigger, much more accepted, and there's even nowadays some yeshivas in Eretz Yisrael that teach Kabbalah from the Lithuanian stream in a slightly different way, but things are coming out a little bit more nowadays. But so this footnote number 32 is discussing how, according to many people, any of those rules that were put up against learning of Kabbalah, things like Hasidus, don't really apply. Certainly to certain people, they don't apply. If someone's soul is longing for Penimius HaTorah, they have to go into it, they have to learn it. And definitely Hasidus. I'm not saying everybody should go and buy, the Kisvei Arizal and start learning pure Kabbalah. That's not what I'm saying. But Hasidus for sure, which brings aspects of Kabbalah and uses them to lighten us up a little bit, to give us some fire, for sure, everybody needs this. Everybody can do this. So let's look at Rav Kook a little bit here. Page 252. This is an important point. And it's a point that some people don't want to hear. It's a little controversial. The insolence of the generation preceding Mashiach's arrival stems from the fact that the world has been readied to the point that it demands the understanding of how all particularities are bound to the all. Rav Kook is saying something so wild. He's saying that the place that we are right now in history, on the doorsteps of Mashiach, we're at the end. And our consciousness nowadays, we're looking for something bigger, more all-encompassing. We're all not satisfied with just, here's a little something, take it and go with it. A little bite, take it and go with it. We're not satisfied with that. We need to see how the picture's going to end. We need to see what's behind the whole entire story. We all want to see the oneness of everything. We all want to see how the curtain's going to be peeled back, and we're going to see God in everything, right? Or for those other people, we're going to see the oneness of the universe in everything, right? We're longing for this, we're desiring for this, and we can't go on without it, many of us, right? In another place he says, okay, there's balance though. It is vital for the spiritual element of the Torah, in all its expansiveness, depth, and reach, to have a place in our yeshivas. Agada, Midrash, philosophy, Kabbalah, Musar, theory, grammar, poetry, and song even. Song, poetry, penned of course by Chachmei Emes and the Chizim Rishonim, are also part of the Torah's primary body. This is part of Torah also. In a third place, immediately after this banner is raised, the spirit of wickedness in the Holy Land will be weakened, and the Most High One will be praised. We need to shine forth the inner light, whether by means of increasing the study of Hasidus or any other secrets of Torah, both for the purpose of avodah or for study itself, so that the light of godliness becomes revealed in the world and all rectifications become possible. Says Rav Kook, we're at the time now where the light has to be shined. We have to see this depth. The Penimius HaTorah is what we need to get us out of this place we're stuck in. Remember, in the story, the viceroy is down. He's gone. He's asleep. Right? And the princess says, there's one thing that's going to allow you to complete your mission. And this is it. It's Penimius HaTorah. Now this, in my opinion, is the most amazing and important quote for this whole entire chapter. Bottom of page 253, Reb Tzadok HaKohen. So, Reb Tzadok HaKohen teaches, there's this concept called Yeridas HaDoros. Yeridas HaDoros means the descending of the generations. And the general understanding of it is that at Har Sinai, when we had Kabbalas HaTorah, we received the Torah on Mount Sinai, right? So that was the biggest revelation. Everything was clear. The whole Torah was given to Moshe Rabbeinu, and he gave it over to everybody. And that was the height of clarity. And every generation, as we step away from Har Sinai and we get further into history, we lose some of that clarity. And we lose some of that connection. It's, by the way, a beautiful reason why it's a halacha that if an elderly person walks into the room, we have to stand up for them. Right? It's a real halacha. Everyone should do. Right? When an elderly person walks into the room, we should stand up for them, for sure. What's one of the deeper ideas behind that? It's because we recognize that they're one step closer to that clarity. They're one step closer to the holiness of Kabbalas HaTorah and Har Sinai, right? So, Yeridas HaDoros, generations are going down. So he says, read this with me over here at the bottom of page 253. The apparent lessening of spiritual stature from generation to generation is only an external phenomenon. On a deeper level, the very opposite is true. As global society continues to sink to new moral lows, the souls Hashem sends down to the world to serve Him amidst the terrible filth are that much more precious, rooted in the loftiest places. What does that mean? It means that if you're around right now, in this time, and you're hanging on to something, you're connected in some way, it's because your soul comes from the highest places. And that only the souls that come from the highest places, very powerful, strong souls, are able to exist in the world that we exist in right now and be successful and make it through. Right? And we think, if only what if I had the soul of one of those, big tzaddikim from 1,000 years ago, right? They were the geniuses. They're the ones whose books we read, right? I'm not saying this. It's not me saying this. Those were the greatest tzaddikim. They were totally amazing. But they weren't here now. Their souls were not high enough to be able to be in the world right now where we are. So we find ourselves in this existence that's never been like this before, where it's literally an absolute maze and a bombardment non-stop of information, misinformation, truths, lies, truths. They're all the same. It's all the same, right? We don't know what's going on. Mm-hmm. Bombardment of fear, constant, non-stop. It's amazing, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't like this in the old days, am I right? I mean, I don't remember listening to the news too much when I was 12 years old, right? But there's nothing else on the news except for fear, non-stop, right? Like I heard the other day, they're talking about this monkey virus now, and they're saying monkeypox. Sorry, monkeypox, and they're saying how it's monkeypox and it's here and it's there, but don't worry, it doesn't seem no one's really concerned about it. So why are you talking about it? Why are you putting into everybody's mind that there's a new virus going around, right? Like if it's not so serious, so stop talking about it. Why do you have to always talk about this? If you nowadays, I'm sorry, this is my rant for today. If you turn on like the news on the radio, I drive a lot because I'm going to the winery and back. You listen to the radio, they're telling the same story every 10 minutes, all day long. And it's always fear. Always. Like, isn't there anything else in the world? Why are we always? It's impossible to exist. Truth, lies, fear, anger. What's going to be like doubt? It's extremely difficult. And in the old days, right? Life was hard. You had to live on your farm, and you had to do a lot more physical labor to be able to live, right? But you had some mind space, right? You had something to think about. You had some time, some space of existence. Yeah. So sorry, mid rant. So this is where we find ourselves. This is what Tzaddik is saying. To exist now in this world, we have to face something that people never faced in the past. Never in the past. It's insane. And so we're powerful. And that's why the powerful souls that exist now, we need this type of Torah. We need something that shows us the unity of everything, that brings everything together, and that pierces not just the world around us, but the inside of us. It goes in, it shows us that the inside of me and the rest of the world is all one. Everything is connected and everything is one. This is what it's doing. Pretty amazing, right? So, the next section, he explains how we have to be careful, though. We can't just only read The Lost Princess. Right? We can't only have Penimius HaTorah. We're not even saying that Penimius HaTorah is more important necessarily than the revealed Torah. Right? Although there is such an argument to be made. But we need to have this balance. We have to learn halacha. We have to do mitzvahs. We have to know Jewish law. We have to know the simple meaning of the Torah, the plain meaning of the Torah. We have to do these things, right? Because if we would really know Penimius HaTorah, we'd know that every single mitzvah I do is unlocking a light and connecting me to that oneness, right? Every time I go out and I eat, I don't want to say. Let's say someone goes out, I won't say anyone's name. Every time someone goes out and has, dim sum, right? They're severing connections of light, right? Every time we go and we decide to go out to let's say a movie and shopping on Saturday instead of keeping Shabbos, we're cutting off deep connections to light and spiritual awareness, and all that fire that we built up from all that movement, right? We're throwing water on it, right? And not only that, the opposite. Every time we do something, and we come to the Friday night davening. Oh, like Richie always comes to Friday night davening, and plugs in, and we sing and we dance, and we have a Shabbos meal, right? We connect, we draw ourselves in, and we're like plugging in a cord that's bringing energy and light into us, but that we're connecting like to the system, to the oneness. Weird mashal, I know, but right? So we need both. We have to have both. And that's really the primary function of Penimius HaTorah in a certain sense, is to show us how all those things that we do, all those 613 mitzvahs, those things that we think are weird and we don't get, that they're really powerhouses of spiritual energy and connection. That's what it's supposed to be teaching us. We can't have one without the other. Amazing. Where are we holding here? Okay, a couple more minutes, and we'll try to stop here. That's really what the rest of the chapter is talking about. Just something quick before we finish up. He says over here, on page 258, in a footnote, he explains the difference between the revealed Torah and hidden Torah, between Penimius and Nigla, in respect to Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. And he says like this: how do we see this? That the Torah of Eretz Yisrael is Penimius, and the Torah of Chutz La'aretz is revealed Torah. How do we see this? Listen to this. So he says that, so thus we find that while Rav Yochanan ben Nuri referred to halacha as gufei Torah, the body of Torah, and the agada, that's the Penimius, to wine, something which is not consistently needed. Rav Dimi, who was from Yerushalayim, compared agada to water, something that we must always have. So the Amora that was in Bavel, that was in Chutz La'aretz, he compared Penimius HaTorah to wine, which we don't always need. But in Israel, Penimius HaTorah was water. We have to always have it, right? Totally amazing. It says weiter that while Rava and Amora living in Bavel, in Babylonia, held that David HaMelech was punished for referring to the Torah as a song. David HaMelech was punished for referring to the Torah as a song. Rabbi Yirmiyah ben Elazar and Rabbi Bivi, who were Amoraim in Eretz Yisrael, saw no problem with referring to the Torah in this way, as a song. Example after example he brings over here to show that there was this kind of dichotomy going on, where in Israel, Penimius was like, you need it like you need to breathe. And in Chutz La'aretz it wasn't, right? In the words of Rav Kook, Eretz Yisrael, which is a place of prophecy, maintains an influence of the prophetic energy in its mode of Torah study. Right? That energy of prophecy and of connection is still attached to Eretz Yisrael. So the Torah that comes out of there is more connected to this. I think, what he's saying over here is that now, the time that we find ourselves in now, when everything is coming to a close, right? Like we find ourselves now, here we are in the middle of Chutzras, we're in Thornhill, Canada, right? And here we're powerfully connected to Penimius HaTorah, right? There's a way of looking at things. I don't want to say it's a halacha. Some people hold like this, but that the kivrei tzaddikim, place where tzaddikim are buried, they have a status of Eretz Yisrael, wherever they are, right? In other words, there's the ability. Rabbi Nachman teaches this in his Torah, also Torah Mem Vav Mem Zayin, that we can establish the area around us as with the holiness of Eretz Yisrael through certain thoughts and certain types of clapping and whatnot. But meaning that we can make Eretz Yisrael, the famous thing that the Lubavitcher Rebbe said when he was asked about, do we have to all move to Eretz Yisrael? He said, Machdu Eretz Yisrael, make Eretz Yisrael here, right? We can make this holiness wherever we find ourselves. I'm not saying don't go to Eretz Yisrael, by the way. I'm pro moving to Eretz Yisrael, don't worry. Okay, there's a little bit more he goes through, but we're going to skip actually because we can't dwell on this stuff forever. But just a couple quotes about Penimius and Sod. Like this, he says, I brought this up during Lag B'Omer. Rav Kook says that someone who only learns and studies the simple meaning of Torah, the surface level of the Torah, they only see the world on a surface level. And they see the world in a way of din and mishpat, judgment. Because that's what the surface level is. You're just seeing from the surface and judging what you see from there. What does Penimius teach us? Penimius teaches us that there's much more going on behind the scenes that you don't really see. And so you can see the world in this way. You can see another person who's acting in a way that you don't appreciate. And instead of judging them right there and then for the way they're acting, you can say, wow, that's not the way I think. What kind of day did they have that brought them to the situation? What have they experienced in their life? What kind of abuse did they endure throughout their life? Where have they been? Right? Why do I need to experience this? Hashem put this person here with me right now. Why am I? This is not about them. Right? I'm not judging them. I want to understand what Hashem is trying to tell me. I see that there's a bigger picture to everything. So I'm able to interact in the world in a way of emunah and see everything as a gift, as a message, as opposed to being angry all the time, right? And upset all the time with everybody else in the world and complaining about everybody. You with me? Amazing. From the Vilna Gaon, who's like so-called the progenitor of the Misnagdim, those who were against the Hasidim. Really, I hold the Vilna Gaon was a Chassid himself also, but he says, listen to this. Penimius HaTorah provides life force to the interiority of the body, the soul. The Yetzer Hara is not able to sway those that occupy themselves with the study of Remez and Sod. Those are the deeper levels of Torah. The Vilna Gaon said, the Yetzer Hara cannot get you if you study the deeper levels of Torah. Totally awesome. Totally awesome. Okay. One little mashal here, he says, from Rav Volbe on page 265. When we're not in this type of connection, we glance at the sky only to know whether to bring an umbrella without experiencing the awesome loftiness of the heavens. Without the vision of Penimius and the bigger picture, you could do this. We can look up at the sky and say, do I need to, it's so sunny, the sky's so, right, I need sunscreen. As opposed to looking at the unbelievable blue sky and the incredible weather that Hashem gave for me this day and appreciating the bigger picture of everything, right? That's focusing on the bigger picture, the Penimius, as opposed to just seeing the with judgment what I'm looking at right in front of my eyes. Okay, we'll skip. We're gonna skip all the way now to page 268 and we'll finish with this. An important point to get back to our story. Okay, so right at the top. of 268. In a desperate attempt to shake the viceroy from his spiritual and emotional coma, the princess grants the viceroy a garment with words of tears, the teachings of Penimius HaTorah, that grant every Jew access to the deep, broad, beautiful, exciting, true, and radically optimistic lessons of our holy tradition. Having gifted the viceroy with her headscarf of elevated consciousness, the princess feels confident in the viceroy's chances of attaining his objective. Right? Meaning, she gave him what he needs. We have what we need. We have to take it now, and we have to use it to find the princess. And she's not worried. She didn't try to pull him along. She didn't leave a rope or something, or a map even, right? She left him Penimius HaTorah. That's enough. So let's go down to the bottom. In the previous section, we learned that the tzaddikim compose garments with their teachings and stories that allow us to access the greatest spiritual lights without being damaged. This counterintuitive model, in which covering something allows for its ultimate revelation, is one example of a Kabbalistic rule which states, the concealment is the revelation. So this is amazing. One of the Kabbalah teachers that I study with a little bit, he explains this like this. We think, and we usually say this, we think that what we're trying to do is to draw light down into the world. To draw light down to ourselves, right? So he said, that's not what we're trying to do. We're actually trying to limit the light. Because the light is so powerful at its source that it means nothing to us. We can't attach ourselves to it. Only when it's put into a package that we are able to receive. It's filtered. It's brought down to our level. Now I can receive it, and now it can do something for me. So all these things that we call spheres, and that we call the alamas, they're all filtering it down more and more, making it that the lower levels are able to receive that light. That's what basically all of Kabbalah is, right? So we think that why are the tzaddikim putting garments on? Why is Rabbi Nachman telling us a story instead of just giving us the facts, right? Just shining the light. And it's because of this, that in order to experience a revelation, there first has to be a concealment, actually, right? Sounds counterintuitive. So on a deeper level, he says, the lack of influence her words seem to have on the viceroy are not despite their great power, but specifically because of it. She can't wake him up right there and then. Why? He's not ready. It's not time. He's not ready for it yet. This princess is right there with him. Did we ever think to ask this question? The actual princess is there, trying to say, I'm here. Like, let's finish the story. Right? And he can't wake up because he's not ready. The light is too powerful. It's not the time yet. So she has to leave him with something that's a little bit. It's a garment specifically, which refers to covering up something, concealing, and the message is written in a way that's hidden. She has to leave him with something that he can receive and that he can make heads and tails out of. That's why only after she leaves does he wake up, because now he's ready for it. So Rabbi Yaakov says over here that it's an important thing to think about when we're dealing with other people in our lives. I'm sure we've all experienced this, right? So sometimes, I know some of us have experienced it for sure, but sometimes we get very excited. We learn something, we see something in Penimius, and it makes sense to us, and it lights something up in us that's been missing for a while. It reignites something in us. And especially if we're spending a lot of time and we're learning deep things, right? Then all those things come together, like Rabbi Nachman's saying over here, and it creates friction and it builds a fire. And all of a sudden we got something going on inside that's really burning, right? But we got to be careful that our fire doesn't blind other people. You know, if a light is too bright, if you're in a dark room, and you step outside in the middle of the day, you can't see for a while. If you're going pitch black to bright sun, you literally can't see, right? Why? Because it's too much light. You're not ready for that light. So too, sometimes we can take our fire and we can start burning other people instead of warming them. So we have to be aware of this. We have to understand that our job sometimes is to figure out what are the garments that we need to put around the ideas that we have, so that other people can experience them in a way that they're ready to experience, and in the time that's right for them to experience it, right? Which is very important. And then we also have to know, so that's an important point, and we can all experience that. Maybe we've experienced the other way around also, where someone else has been a little bit too much for us to handle, right? And it's burned us a little bit, right? So too, in our own journey, not necessarily referring to other people, we have to know and be okay with the fact that it's not always right for us. We can't just always jump to the next level. We can't just always, move and move and move. Sometimes we have to have a setback, and we have to take our time and allow ourselves to internalize some of these deep ideas. And we should always remember, that's okay, right? We don't have to save the world in the next few minutes. We have to do our part with emunah and bitachon, and have emunah in Hashem that He knows what He's doing, right? It's not up to me to save everyone around me, and it's not up to me to be the biggest tzaddik in the world. I have to do my part, and I have to have emunah that Hashem is going to take care of everything and put us in the right path. So just to recap, that Penimius HaTorah, which is the key. This is what the princess leaves us to be able to find her. It's the key. And it's the aspect of Torah that unites everything. It unites all aspects of Torah together. Mishnah, Gemara, Chumash, Talmud, everything together. It shows the unity of everything and how everything fits together. Not only that, it shows how all that stuff fits together with me in the deepest level of my existence. Not only that, it shows how all aspects of Torah and my soul is connected to everything in the world. And everything in the world is connected, and everything in the world is valuable, because everything I come in contact with, Hashem has put there for me somehow to be able to experience the oneness of Him, right? The universe, right? And this is what Penimius teaches us. We should remember that we have to have Penimius, and we have to have Nigla. We have to learn halacha. We have to learn mitzvahs, because Penimius is what's going to illuminate and show us how those mitzvahs are really the deepest connectors that we can possibly have. We have to know that when we see that people don't fit into a system, that we have to know there's no such thing as failing out of the system. There's no such thing as being off the derech. There's something missing. And those souls are looking for something deep and looking for something connective. And if there's any way that we can help to connect them to Penimius, if there's any way that we can help in any way, we should do our part, but without burning, without blinding, without trying to, illuminate them with me, right? It's dangerous. We have to know that there has to be a constriction, and we have to do our part, but not more than that. I hope that all makes sense. It's a lot to shove into one shir, but with that, we'll finish chapter 15, and we'll move on to chapter 16 next week. Any questions, comments, well wishes? Okay, thank you everybody. Have an amazing week, and we'll see you all next week in Mitzvah Hashem. All the best.